Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Marine Colonel Alexander Donovan stood motionless during the military ceremony. Each medal on his chest represented blood spilled and lives saved. His steel-gray eyes swept across the assembled crowd, analyzing potential threats, a habit ingrained through multiple combat tours. At 42, his presence commanded the attention of every person in the room, from the youngest recruit to the most seasoned officer. For exceptional leadership in a classified operation resulting in the successful rescue of 3 American aid workers and the disruption of a major arms trafficking network, Colonel Alexander Donovan is hereby awarded. The base commander's voice resonated powerfully across the ceremonial hall. In the front row, Helena Donovan maintained her practiced smile, though her manicured nails dug into her palms. She watched as her husband accepted yet another commendation, another medal that would distance him further from her. At 35, she expertly administered the art of appearing proud while suppressing the bitterness that threatened to crack her carefully constructed facade. "Sir, the operation was a team effort." Alex's voice carried the weight of authority as he addressed the commander. "Lieutenant Simon Gray gave his life to ensure its success. The credit belongs to him and to the men who followed him into hell." Lieutenant Simon Gray's sacrifice was acknowledged as Helene Gray, his widow, stood near the stage in a striking black dress, a stark reminder of the price military families paid. For a fleeting moment, her eyes met Alex's, and he saw in them the same haunted look he faced in the mirror every morning, the look of someone who had lost too much. After the ceremony, Captain Miranda Stone approached Alex with a stack of files. "Colonel, we need to discuss the intelligence from the Syrian operation. There are some irregularities in the arms dealer profiles." "Not now, Miranda," Alex replied in a low but firm tone. "Tonight's for the families." Helena watched the exchange from across the room, noting how her husband's posture softened when speaking with his intelligence officer, a professional intimacy built on shared dangers and secrets that she could never penetrate. A gentle voice interrupted Helena's thoughts. "Mrs. Donovan." It was a soft-spoken man standing beside her. The impeccably tailored suit and boyish smile of Warren Carmichael offered a sharp contrast to the uniformed officers around them. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed distant during the ceremony." Helena's practiced smile faltered for a moment. "Mr. Carmichael, I didn't expect to see you here." "Please, call me Warren. My company's veteran employment program works closely with the base. Supporting military families is our priority." As his hand brushed against hers, while handing her a glass of champagne, the brief contact sent an electric current through her body. Across the room, Alex was surrounded by junior officers, all eager to hear sanitized versions of his combat experiences. Helena recognized that commanding tone, the same tone he used to maintain the image expected of a Marine colonel. 15 years, Helena murmured while taking a sip of champagne. "Excuse me." Warren leaned closer, his cologne a stark contrast to the sterile military environment. 15 years of marriage, and I still feel like I'm competing with the court for my husband's attention." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Warren's understanding smile made her chest tighten. "I was married to a career officer. I know exactly what you mean. Have you considered joining our military spouse support group? We meet every Thursday." Before Helena could respond, Alex appeared beside her, his hand possessively resting on her lower back. "Warren Carmichael," Alex acknowledged with a neutral tone but assessing eyes, "your company submitted a bid for the new training simulator contract. Colonel Donovan, your reputation precedes you." The Syrian operation was masterfully executed. Warren maintained his pleasant demeanor, but Helena felt the tension between the men intensify. With significant casualties, Alex's voice took on an edge. "If you'll excuse us, my wife and I have dinner plans." Later that night in their North Carolina home, Helena sat at her vanity removing her makeup while Alex reviewed mission reports in his study. The silence between them stretched like a chasm. Helene Gray seemed to be holding up well, Helena ventured as she entered his study. Alex didn't look up from his files. Helene's stronger than most. She understands the sacrifice. Like I'm supposed to understand. Helena's words came out sharper than intended. Alex finally met her gaze, his eyes hard. Helena, we've discussed this. My position, your position, requires secrecy, demands sacrifice, and has become our marriage. Helena's voice cracked. I lost our baby while you were deployed, Alex, the third time. I needed my husband, not a commanding officer sending condolences through official channels. Those missions save lives, Helena. Alex's voice remained steady. Control American lives. Would you have preferred I abandon my men in the field? Helena laughed, a hollow sound. There will always be another mission, another crisis, another reason why the great Colonel Donovan can't be just a husband. She turned to leave, but Alex's voice stopped her. I have another deployment coming up. 4 months, at a classified location. Helena didn't turn around. She couldn't bear to see the detachment in his eyes. Of course you do, he murmured. In their bedroom, Helena's phone lit up with a message from Warren. Thursday, 2 p.m. at the base community center. Sometimes talking helps. She stared at the message for a long moment before typing. I'll be there. The next morning, Captain Miranda Stone watched Helena leave the base gym, noting the determined stride and rigid posture. Miranda had served with Alex long enough to recognize the signs of a marriage under strain. Later, with permission to speak freely, Miranda entered Alex's office, where he was reviewing security protocols. Sir, Helena's struggling. The loss of another pregnancy, and your deployments are taking a toll. Alex's fingers stilled on the keyboard. My marriage is not a matter for military discussion, Captain. With respect, sir, everything in our line of work leads into our personal lives. We've seen it happen before when relationships fracture. That's enough. Alex's tone left no room for argument. Focus on the intelligence gaps in the Syrian operation. Something about those arms dealers doesn't add up. Miranda hesitated before leaving. Yes, sir. And sir, Warren Carmichael was asking questions about our communication protocols at the ceremony. He seemed unusually interested in our security measures. Alex's expression hardened. Keep an eye on him. Carmichael Defense Solutions has been aggressive in pursuing military contracts lately. I want to know why. As Miranda left, Alex pulled up Warren Carmichael's file on his secure terminal. The man's background was pristine, almost too pristine. His company had grown rapidly over the past year, securing contracts that should have been out of reach for a relatively new player in the defense industry. In their kitchen that evening, Helena prepared dinner while scrolling through her social media. Pictures of happy military families and proud spouses supporting their service members, all carefully filtered and staged. Her own profile showed the same, the perfect military wife supporting her decorated husband. Yet none of it revealed the emptiness that consumed her. She paused on a photo from 3 years ago. Alex holding her in his arms at a military ball, both smiling. It had been taken 2 weeks before her second miscarriage, 2 weeks before Alex deployed to an undisclosed location, leaving her to face the loss alone. The sound of Alex's car in the driveway made her quickly wipe away tears. A military wife wasn't meant to cry. She was expected to be strong, supportive, and understanding. Sometimes she forgot who Helena truly was, but Warren had seen through the facade. As she set the table for another silent dinner with her husband, Helena made her decision. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. The military spouse support group met in a bright room at the base community center in Charleston, where the forceful cheer of motivational posters clashed with the tired eyes of the attendees. Helena sat in the back, watching as Warren guided the discussion with practiced ease. Separation anxiety, depression, feelings of isolation. These are all normal responses to the military lifestyle. Warren's voice carried just the right mix of authority and empathy. The key is finding healthy ways to cope. Helena observed how other spouses leaned toward him when he spoke, drawn to his understanding smile and gentle demeanor. When their eyes met across the room, She felt seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. After the session, Warren approached her chair. "Coffee? There's a place just off base that makes an excellent espresso." The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the main streets where they might encounter other military personnel. Helena wrapped her hands around her cup, absorbing its warmth. Alex was deployed during all 3 miscarriages. She found herself saying softly, "The first time, I convinced myself it was just bad timing." By the 3rd, her voice trailed off. Warren reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You don't have to justify your feelings, Helena. The military demands everything from service members and expects their spouses to accept the leftovers. Alex says I knew what I was signing up for when I married him. But did you? Did you know you'd be facing the loss of your children alone? Did you know your husband would prioritize classified operations over your grief?" Warren's tone remained gentle, but his words struck deep. Helena withdrew her hand, suddenly conscious of their public location. I should go." "Helena," Warren called as she stood. "Same time next week. Sometimes having someone to talk to makes all the difference." The weekly coffee meetings became her sanctuary. Warren listened without judgment and offered comfort without demands. He even shared stories of his own failed marriage to a career officer, how the military had consumed their relationship until nothing remained. One rainy afternoon, their hands touched as they both reached for the check. Neither pulled away. The next week, coffee turned into lunch at an upscale restaurant in Charleston, far from the scrutinizing military eyes. "You're different today," Warren observed, studying her across the table. "Literally different." Helena smiled, a genuine smile for once. "I feel lighter, being here, being able to just be Helena instead of Colonel Donovan's wife." Their first kiss happened in the restaurant parking lot, hidden by the tinted windows of Warren's luxury SUV. It was gentle and questioning, nothing like Alex's calculated displays of affection at military functions. After that, the lies came easily. Therapy sessions that ran long, shopping trips with friends, base spouse meetings. Alex, consumed by preparations for his upcoming deployment, barely noticed her absences. Dana Rivers, Helena's closest friend on base, covered for her without asking questions. "Girls' night at my place" became their code for Helena's afternoons with Warren. "I don't know what's changed," Dana commented during an actual lunch together. "But you seem happier lately, less tense." Helena stirred her salad, a mix of satisfaction and melancholy. "Sometimes we find support in unexpected places." The first time they met at a hotel, Helena had spent an hour sitting in her car, debating whether to go inside. Warren had waited patiently, understanding her hesitation and never pushing. "We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," he had assured her when she finally entered the room. "We can just talk." But talking led to touching, and touching led to more. In Warren's arms, Helena felt desired, appreciated, and alive in ways she had long forgotten were possible. Between meetings, Warren kept their connection alive with text messages and phone calls, asking about her day, remembering details she'd mentioned in passing, and showing genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings, small attentions that Alex had long since stopped providing. Captain Miranda Stone noticed the change in Helena's demeanor during base functions. The colonel's wife seemed more relaxed, yet somehow more guarded. Miranda's intelligence training flagged these behavioral shifts, but her loyalty to Alex created an inner conflict. "Mrs. Donovan," Miranda approached Helena at a base fundraiser. "How are you holding up with the colonel's deployment coming up?" "Fine. Thank you," Helena replied with a practiced, perfect smile. "The spouse support group has been helpful." Miranda nodded, noticing how Helena's hand tightened around her wine glass at the mention of the group. "Warren leads that program, doesn't he? He seems very invested in military families. He understands what we go through." Helena's defense was swift, perhaps too swift. "Not everyone does." Meanwhile, Warren's interest in base activities grew more focused. During support group sessions, he encouraged spouses to share their struggles with deployment schedules, unit movements, and security protocols. Each seemingly innocent piece of information added to a larger picture. "My husband's unit is preparing for something big," confided Melody Cross, wife of Sergeant Justin Cross, during one session. "Extra training, restricted communications. You know how it is." Warren nodded sympathetically while making mental notes. "It's hard when they can't tell us anything. It makes you feel shut out of their lives." After the meetings, he compiled the information gathered: deployment patterns, security rotation schedules, communication protocols, details that his company's bid for the base's new security contract would benefit from, given such insider knowledge. Meanwhile, Alex immersed himself in training his new team. Sergeant Justin Cross showed particular promise, reminding Alex of his own early days in the Corps. "Your wife seems to be doing better," Justin mentioned during a training break. "Melody says she's been more involved with the spouse group lately." Alex grunted non-committally. Helena's always been good at adapting. The comment might have struck him differently if he hadn't been focused on the intelligence reports crossing his desk. Something about the Syrian arms dealer network nagged at him. Connections that seemed too convenient, and intel that arrived too easily. In the quiet of their bedroom, Helena listened to Alex's even breathing as he slept, his body tense even in rest. She thought about the hotel keycard hidden in her purse, about Warren's gentle touch and understanding words. The guilt was there, yet it was overshadowed by a growing sense of justice. Hadn't Alex's dedication to the Corps become its own form of betrayal? Her phone buzzed softly, a message from Warren asking if she was awake. She typed back a simple yes, knowing it would lead to hours of intimate conversation, while her husband slept beside her, oblivious to the distance growing between them. Staff Sergeant Evan McAllister hunched over his computer terminal in the base cybersecurity center, his eyes narrowing as he detected emerging patterns on his screen. A sophisticated attempted breach of the communication systems. "Sir, you need to see this," he called out to Alex, who was passing through on his daily security rounds. Alex leaned over McAllister's shoulder, his expression hardening as he absorbed the information. "How long has this been happening?" "First attempt started 3 months ago. They're getting more aggressive. The IP addresses trace back to various locations, but there's something familiar about the attack patterns." McAllister pulled up another screen. "And, sir, some of these attempts originate from within the base network." Alex's jaw tightened. "Cross-reference the timestamps with base personnel logs. I want to know who had access during these attempts." "Already done, sir." "And that's where it gets interesting," McAllister whispered. "Several attempts coincide with scheduled maintenance by Carmichael Defense Solutions." Before Alex could respond, his phone vibrated with a message from Helena. "We need to talk about Antwerp." The NATO position had been a point of contention for weeks. 3 years in the Netherlands meant stability, prestige, and most importantly for Alex, access to intelligence networks tracking international arms dealers. For Helena, it meant 3 more years as a military wife in a foreign country, further from family and friends. That evening, Alex found Helena in their kitchen, her posture as rigid as she prepared dinner. "You wanted to talk about Antwerp." "No, Alex, you wanted to talk about Antwerp. You've already decided we're going." Helena's tone was cool as she continued stirring the pot on the stove. "Just like you decided on this deployment without discussing it with me. This isn't about the deployment." Alex moved closer, noting the familiar tension in her tone. "NATO needs experienced commanders who understand modern warfare. The position comes with. I don't care what it comes with." Helena spun to face him, her voice rising. "I spent 15 years following your career, losing our babies while you were saving the world, pretending to be the perfect military wife. I can't do the Netherlands. I won't." "Helena." "No." Alex's voice boomed. "You don't get to use that tone with me. I'm not one of your Marines to be commanded. I'm supposed to be your husband." But she couldn't even see the man she once knew. Then I don't even know who we are anymore. Alex studied her intently, his gaze as piercing as he once analyzed enemy positions. What's really going on, Helena? You've been different lately. Helena laughed bitterly. Different? You're actually noticing something about me. Is this about the support group? Alex's question carried a sharp edge. Warren's support group. Helena's hand trembled as she gripped the counter. Don't you dare make this about him. This is about us minus 15 years of me being alone in this marriage. You knew who I was when you married me. Alex's voice remained measured and controlled. A Marine puts duty first. Duty. Was it duty that kept you from being there when I lost our children? Was it duty that made you miss every anniversary for the past 3 years? She moved toward the door. I need some air. Helena. Alex's commanding voice stopped her. This conversation isn't finished. She turned, her eyes cold. Yes, it is. Just like our marriage. As Helena drove away, her phone buzzed with a message from Warren. Bad night. I'm here if you need me. In his office, Santos Sterling reviewed the dossier Warren had provided on Colonel Donovan. The colonel's combat record was impressive. Multiple tours, specialized training, and countless classified operations. Santo had run enough black ops to recognize a formidable opponent. The wife wants him gone, Warren explained calmly as he sat across from Santo in a private room at an upscale Washington restaurant. But it needs to look like a robbery gone wrong. Santo raised an eyebrow. A man like Donovan won't go down easily. My team will need detailed intel on his routines, security systems, everything. Already handled, Warren replied, pulling out a tablet. Helena has provided full access to their home layout, and I have other sources on base feeding me his schedule. Carlos Morales, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. What about base security response time? Warren smiled thinly. My company is handling the new security contract installation. We'll have a window when the systems are transitioning. The Hand twins, Dean and Daniel, exchanged looks. Electronic countermeasures, one of them whispered. You'll have everything you need, Warren assured them. Helena will be out with friends. Dana Rivers will provide her alibi. Clean. Simple. Untraceable. Back at the base, Captain Miranda Stone reviewed the security breach data with growing concern. The pattern was too precise, too targeted. After a training session, she caught up with Alex. Sir, we need to discuss the Syrian operation. Something's not adding up with those arms dealers. Alex wiped sweat from his face. What did you find? The intel we received. It was too perfect. Like someone wanted us to find that specific network. Miranda handed him a file. Now I'm seeing similar patterns in these security breaches. Alex's expression darkened as he read. Keep digging, but keep it quiet. If there's a leak, Colonel. Staff Sergeant McAllister hurried over. Sir, you need to see this. Another breach attempt. But this time we traced it. It's not here. Alex cut him off. Note several contractors working nearby. My office. Both of you. 10 minutes. Helena sat in her car outside Dana Rivers' house, Warren's words echoing in her mind. Santino Sterling. The name reverberated with finality, each decision laden with consequence. Her phone lit up with a text from Alex. We need to talk. Really talk. About everything. For a moment, her finger hovered over the reply button before another message appeared from Warren. Everything's arranged. Just say the word. Helena took a deep breath and typed. Do it. In Alex's office, Miranda spread out intelligence reports. The arms dealers in Syria, the security breaches, and Carmichael Defense Solutions involvement. They were all connected. We need more time to prove it. Alex mused as his phone buzzed with Helena's message. Staying at Dana's tonight. Don't wait up. His combat instincts screamed that something was horribly wrong. Sir, a commanding voice pulled him back. What are your orders? Alex looked at the evidence before him, his tactical mind already forming connections. Lock down all sensitive data. Activate Protocol Echo. And get me everything you have on Warren Carmichael's movements for the past 6 months. Yes, sir, Miranda replied, pausing at the door. In my estimation, sir, should we? My wife is not your concern, Captain. Focus on the mission. Alex's voice carried a dangerous edge. As night fell over the base, pieces moved into position. Santos Sterling briefed his team while Warren made final arrangements. In a guest room at Dana's house, Helena sat staring at her wedding ring, each glint a reminder of a decision that would change everything. Then her phone buzzed with a message from Alex. We need to talk. Really talk. Years of combat instinct told him something was terribly amiss. Alex sat in his study, satellite photos of Syrian weapons caches spread across his desk, yet his eyes were fixed on a single surveillance photo taken earlier that day. Helena leaving a hotel with Warren Carmichael. The colonel's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator preparing to strike. The man who had led troops through the worst combat zones on Earth, never having lost a tactical engagement, had built his reputation on always being 3 steps ahead of his enemies. Now he began to plan. Helena had no idea that by choosing to marry, she had set in motion events that would expose a conspiracy far beyond a simple affair. The perfect facade of their lives was about to crumble, and with it, the carefully constructed web of lies that had entangled them all. Later, Alex sat in his study at 0200 hours, the glow of his computer screen illuminating stacks of intelligence reports. His mind processed the data with machine-like efficiency, connecting fragments into a clear picture. The Syrian arms dealer network, the security breaches, and Warren Carmichael's sudden rise in the defense contracting world. All patterns for those trained to see them. His phone buzzed with a text from Sergeant Cooper. Security system upgrade complete. Silent protocol active. Alex's response was brief. Acknowledged. The new security system had been Cooper's suggestion after Alex shared his suspicions. Trust your instincts, sir, Cooper had said. Years of combat had honed Alex's senses, and a soft creak from outside drew his attention. Something was wrong. Helena wasn't home. He reached beneath his desk, fingers wrapping around cold steel. Outside in the darkness, Santos Sterling directed his team with precise hand signals. Carlos Morales took point, moving toward the back entrance, while the Ham twins, Dean and Daniel, monitored their electronic warfare equipment designed to bypass standard security systems. All clear, Dean whispered through their encrypted comms. Santo allowed himself a small smile. Warren's intel had been precise. According to Helena's description, Alex was a creature of routine despite his combat experience. Remember, Santo murmured, make it look messy. A robbery gone wrong. Carlos reached the back door, his lock-picking tools working silently and efficiently. The door opened without resistance, a sign they had not anticipated. Alex watched through hidden cameras as 4 figures entered his home. His face remained impassive as he activated a preset command on his phone. Protocol Echo initiated. In the base security center, Sergeant Cooper's screen lit up with the alert. He immediately notified the Quick Reaction Force while initiating secondary protocols Alex had prepared. Carlos moved through the kitchen, weapon at the ready. The house was unnervingly quiet, devoid of the usual electronic hum. His instincts screamed danger, yet Santo's hand signal urged him forward. The Ham twins' confident expressions faltered as their equipment displays went dark. Something's wrong, Daniel whispered. We've lost all signals. Aboard, Santo commanded, but his voice died in his throat as the house plunged into complete darkness. Then, Alex's voice cut through the blackness, calm and deadly. Welcome to my home. The first shot struck Carlos in the chest before he could raise his weapon. Alex had memorized the trajectory angles of his home during his combat career, marking blind spots and kill zones with the precision of a man who treated home defense like battlefield preparation. Dean's attempt to activate backup systems met with silence. It's dead. Everything's dead. Spread out, Santo ordered, but Alex had already repositioned. Another shot rang out, and Dean collapsed with a grunt of pain. Daniel turned to run, only to come face to face with Alex. The colonel's eyes held no mercy as he struck. Years of close combat and rigorous training evident in the brutal efficiency of his movements. Although Santo managed to fire 2 rounds, Alex had already moved. The intruder found himself fighting an opponent who knew the terrain intimately and had prepared for this very moment. "You chose the wrong target," Alex declared from behind Santo. Santo spun, but Alex's strike was faster. Santo hit the ground, his weapon skittering away. Base security arrived promptly, finding Alex securing the last of the intruders. He stood in his study, speaking calmly into his phone. "Captain Stone, we have a situation requiring your immediate attention." The quick reaction force swept the house. Every movement executed with military precision. Alex's expression remained impassive as he provided initial details to the base. "Sir, one of the intruders had a text message, targeted, planned." A young officer approached, handing Alex a phone displaying the incriminating text. "Secure the prisoners. Full isolation protocol. No outside contact." Outside, Helena received increasingly panicked texts from Morin. "Team not responding. Something's wrong. Get out now." She stared at her phone, the reality of her actions crashing down around her. Alex wasn't just a soldier. He was a predator who had been several steps ahead all along. Helena's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she approached her house in North Carolina. Police lights pulsed in the darkness, transforming neighboring homes into silent witnesses. Military police vehicles blocked the street, a clear signal that this was no ordinary crime scene. Captain Miranda Stone stood at the perimeter, her professional expression unwavering as she directed investigators. "Mrs. Donovan, I need you to come with me," she said authoritatively. Inside, the scene told its own harrowing story. Carlos Morales lay dead with his weapon unfired. Dean collapsed on a stretcher as medical personnel worked swiftly to stabilize him. Santos, Sterling, and Daniel were handcuffed, their specialized equipment laid out as evidence. Alex stood in his study, giving his statement to detectives. His voice remained steady as he described the home invasion. Not a hair out of place. He recounted, despite the violence that had occurred. The first intruder entered at approximately 2:17 hours, he stated with precise recall. Their electronic warfare equipment suggested a military or intelligence background. I defended myself accordingly. Helena felt her legs weaken as she absorbed the scene. Across the room, Alex's eyes met hers. In that moment, she knew he had known everything. The affair, the plot, every betrayal. Dana Rivers burst through the police line, her face ashen. "Helena, I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay?" "What happened?" Before Helena could respond, Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "Mrs. Rivers, the investigators will want to speak with you about your role in tonight's events." Dana's confusion was genuine. "My role? I don't understand." "Your friend used you as an alibi," Captain Stone explained in a tone as cold as steel. "While you thought you were covering for an affair, you were actually facilitating a murder attempt." Helena watched in horror as realization dawned on Dana's face. "Oh God. Helena, tell me you didn't." Staff Sergeant McAllister approached Alex with a tablet. "Sir, we've compiled the surveillance data, the breach attempts, the unauthorized access, the communications. It all ties back to Carmichael Defense Solutions." Alex nodded once. "Start the trace on Warren Carmichael's accounts. Freeze everything." Helena tried to speak. "Alex, I can explain. Save it for the investigators." Alex cut her off, his tone devoid of emotion. "Captain Stone, ensure Mrs. Donovan is properly processed. Full security protocol." Captain Stone gripped Helena's arm firmly. "Mrs. Donovan, you are being detained under suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder and espionage." The word espionage hit Helena like a physical blow. "Espionage? I never. Your lover wasn't just interested in my death. He used you to access classified information, information that got American soldiers killed in Syria. The implications crashed over Helena as federal agents began arriving. The affair, Warren's probing questions about Alex's work, the seemingly innocent conversations about base operations, it had all been part of a larger plan. Dana Rivers sat with investigators, her statement revealing a pattern of deception. I was meeting friends, shopping, attending spouse support meetings. I never questioned it, never thought. Melody Cross arrived with Justin Cross, her expression shifting from concern to disgust as she learned the truth. You used our friendship, she accused. You used all of us. Alex watched the scene unfold with cold detachment, his tactical mind already moving to the next phase. The failed hit wasn't the end. It was leverage to unravel a larger conspiracy. Later, in a secure conference room at the base, Alex assembled his team, Captain Miranda Stone, Sergeant Cooper, and civilian intelligence analyst Kristen Myers, around a table covered in evidence files. Warren Carmichael isn't merely running a defense contracting company. Alex began sharply. He's running an intelligence gathering operation. Helena was just one vector of attack. Kristen pulled up financial records on the main screen. His company's growth makes no sense. They secured contracts they shouldn't have had access to, and developed technology they shouldn't have known about. Exactly, Miranda added. He targeted military families, created a support group to gather intelligence. Helena wasn't special. She was convenient. Alex's expression hardened. Show me the connection to the Syrian operation. Sergeant Cooper brought up surveillance photos of arms dealers the team had encountered. They had advanced knowledge of our operation. That's why Lieutenant Gray and his men walked into an ambush. Miranda confirmed. Carmichael's company sold them the intel, but we need proof to stand up in court. Alex studied the evidence with cold calculation. We have their assault team. Start with them. In the interrogation room, Santos Sterling maintained his professional demeanor until Alex entered and pulled up a chair. Your team used modified military equipment, Alex stated. Equipment that matches shipments stolen from 3 different bases. The same bases that underwent security upgrades by Carmichael Defense Solutions. Santo remained silent until Alex continued. Lieutenant Gray's blood is on your hands. Either you talk, or I ensure you face charges for his murder too. Santo's facade cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Carmichael's operation runs deeper than you know. Try me, Alex challenged. Meanwhile, Miranda coordinated with federal agencies, building a case that would dismantle the network. Anonymous tips pointed journalists toward financial irregularities and suspicious contracts. Helena sat in her cell, the reality of her situation sinking in. Her attorney, provided by Warren, had stopped answering calls. Her assets were frozen. Her friends had abandoned her. And the evidence against her mounted. Alex's revenge was methodical and absolute. Each day brought new revelations, new arrests, new betrayals exposed. Warren's carefully constructed empire began crumbling under the weight of federal investigations. Melody Cross provided recordings from support group meetings, revealing how Warren manipulated vulnerable families for information. Dana Rivers' testimony outlined a pattern of deception that had allowed Helena to participate in the murder plot. Santos Sterling, facing multiple life sentences, finally broke. His confession implicated Warren in arms deals spanning 3 continents. The Ham twins, offered immunity, revealed technical details of their operation, including evidence linking directly to the ambush in the Netherlands. Alex reviewed each piece of evidence with the intensity of a battle-hardened commander. This wasn't just about punishing Helena's betrayal. It was about dismantling a network that had cost American lives. Miranda watched her commander with a mixture of respect and concern. Sir, the prosecutor's office wants to know if you'll testify against Helena. Alex's response was cold. Schedule it. She chose her side. The colonel's reputation for tactical brilliance took on new meaning as his counter-offensive unfolded. Warren's attempts to destroy evidence were thwarted by Cooper's cyber team. His emergency protocols had been compromised before he could activate them. Helena, watching her world collapse from her cell, finally understood the full scope of Alex's capabilities. She had conspired with Warren, thinking Alex was just a soldier, never realizing she was up against a strategic mastermind who treated betrayal like an enemy operation to be crushed. The evidence mounted, the witnesses spoke, and the conspiracy unraveled. Alex Donovan, the man Helena had dismissed as emotionally distant, proved to be a calculating predator who turned her betrayal into a weapon against her conspirators. Warren's empire crumbled piece by piece, each revelation exposing new layers of corruption. The man who had seduced Helena with understanding smiles and gentle words was revealed as a traitor who had sold American lives for profit. Alex's revenge wasn't just complete, it was devastating in its thoroughness. He didn't merely destroy the murder plot. He dismantled the entire criminal enterprise that had enabled it. His response to betrayal became a testament to the ruthless efficiency that had made him a legendary Marine commander. Warren Carmichael sat at the Montecito Bay Hotel's bar, nursing a gin and tonic. His confidence was bolstered by offshore accounts and a new identity, papers identifying him as Alexander Carey, now secure in his suite upstairs, along with 3 different passports and access codes to cryptocurrency wallets. "Another drink, sir?" the bartender asked. "Macallan 25. "Neat," came the deep response. Warren's blood ran cold as Nathaniel Hogan slid onto the stool beside him, a former Force Recon Marine with a muscle-bound frame who blocked Warren's path to the exit. "You're far from North Carolina," Hogan said in a conversational tone. "Funny coincidence running into you here." Warren's hand inched toward his phone. "Do I know you?" "But I knew Lieutenant Simon Gray. We served together." Hogan's eyes held the cold focus of a predator, and so did Helene Gray, who was seated at a table behind him. "The Gray family has significant resources," she stated, approaching the bar. "Did you think we wouldn't find your money trail? The same accounts you used to pay off Santos Sterling and his team." Warren forced a laugh. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm here on business. The business of selling military intelligence to arms dealers." Hogan interjected. "The same dealers who killed Lieutenant Gray's team in the Netherlands." Warren's phone buzzed. A message from his contact at the bank. "Accounts frozen. Federal seizure order. Your crypto wallets are gone too." Helene added coolly, "Colonel Donovan's team is quite thorough." Warren bolted for the door, but Hogan's grip clamped onto his shoulder. "Running makes it worse. Trust me." In North Carolina, Helena sat in her cell, staring at the latest letter from another law firm declining to represent her. The words blurred together, "Unable to take your case at this time. Conflict of interest. Regret to inform you." A guard announced, "Visitor." Helena looked up to find Captain Miranda Stone standing at her cell door, her presence radiating authority even in civilian clothes. "Come in, Mrs. Donovan. Come in." Helena asked softly. "Just to warn you," Miranda replied. "Warren's associates are getting nervous. They think you know too much." Helena laughed bitterly. "I don't know anything. I was just the foolish wife who attended classified briefings as a spouse, who had access to my husband's home office, who spent months feeding information to a foreign intelligence asset." Miranda's voice cut like steel. "You know more than you realize, and that makes you dangerous to them." Helena's facade cracked. "What am I supposed to do? No lawyer will touch my case. My accounts are frozen." "Alex is offering you a deal," Miranda said, placing a document on the cell's desk. "Full cooperation in exchange for protection. It's your choice." At the FBI field office, Dana Rivers provided another statement regarding the spouse support group meetings. Warren had asked about deployment schedules and base security protocols, making it seem like he was helping families prepare. "And Helena's involvement?" the agent prompted. Dana wiped tears from her eyes. "She used us all, our friendships, to establish alibis. I thought I was helping her hide. Not this. Not this." Alex watched the interview through a one-way glass, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Kristen Myers analyzed data on her laptop. "Sir," she called out, "we found the connection. Warren's company wasn't just selling intel, they were providing targeting data to arms dealers in the Netherlands. The ambush that killed Lieutenant Gray. They knew exactly where to hit." Alex's jaw tightened. "Send it to Helene. She'll know what to do with it." Kristen hesitated about Helena's protection request. "Processed," Alex ordered. "She's more valuable alive to testify than dead with her secrets." In Montevideo, Warren found himself trapped between Hogan's implacable presence and Helene Gray's cold determination. His phone buzzed with alerts as his carefully constructed escape routes collapsed one by one. "Colonel Donovan sends his regards," Helene said as she slid a phone across the bar. "He'd like to talk." Warren stared at the device, remembering how easily he had manipulated Helena, exploiting her loneliness and resentment. He had underestimated her husband, who was not merely a distant military commander, but a tactical genius holding all the pieces. The phone rang. Warren picked it up with trembling fingers. "Mr. Carey." Alex's voice resonated with the same steely tone he used in combat. "Let's discuss your surrender terms." From his command center at Quinara, Alex coordinated the endgame, with screens displaying real-time feeds from Montevideo, general task force positions, and surveillance on Warren's remaining associates. "Target Alpha is contained," Hogan reported. "Helene's resources have locked down his escape routes. Interpol teams are in position." Miranda added, marking locations on the main display. "Warren's network is exposed. We are moving on his partners in Dubai, Singapore, and Zurich." Alex studied the intelligence with predatory focus. "The Syrian arms dealer leadership. Confirmed in Amman," Kristen reported. "The intel Warren sold them. We traced it back to their command center." "Excellent." Alex's lips curved slightly. "Send the coordinates to our assets in the region. They've waited long enough for payback." Helena's deal with federal prosecutors came with strict conditions. Seated in a secure room and surrounded by investigators, she detailed Warren's operation. "The spouse support group was his recruiting ground," she explained. "He targeted women like me, wives of high-ranking officers, especially those with access to classified information, making us feel understood and valued, while the information gathering escalated." Her voice cracked. "I never realized. I never wanted to see what he was really doing." Alex watched the interview feed, his expression hardening. The woman he had married, who had shared his bed and home, had helped enemies target American soldiers. The magnitude of her betrayal extended far beyond their marriage. "Sir," Miranda approached with new intel, "Warren's trying to bargain, saying he has classified data we haven't found yet." "He's lying," Alex replied firmly. "Cooper's team stripped his servers clean weeks ago. Let him think he has leverage. It'll make the fall harder." In Montevideo, Warren sat in a secure room as Interpol agents catalogued his crimes. His attempt to flee had been thwarted by Alex's meticulous planning. His emergency protocols compromised. "Your company sold targeting data to arms dealers," Helene declared, laying out photos. "These men died because of the intelligence you provided. American soldiers, my husband." Warren's arrogance crumbled under the relentless presentation of evidence. "I can help you recover," Hogan interjected. "We've already recovered everything." Alex's voice came through the room's speakers. "Did you think I wouldn't investigate my wife's lover, Mr. Carmichael? Did you think I wouldn't notice the pattern of security breaches coinciding with your company's contracts?" Warren slumped in his chair. "What do you want?" "The same thing you wanted. Everything." Alex's tone remained clinical. "Your networks, your contacts, your entire operation. Consider it payment for targeting my men." Over the next 24 hours, Warren's empire was dismantled piece by piece. Federal agents raided offices across 3 continents. Offshore accounts were frozen, shell companies exposed, and corrupt officials arrested. In Amman, the arms dealer leadership that had orchestrated Lieutenant Gray's death discovered the true cost of underestimating Colonel Donovan. Special operations teams, armed with intelligence from Warren servers, struck decisively. Helena watched news reports of Warren's arrest from her cell. The man who had seduced her with understanding smiles and gentle touches was revealed as a traitor who had used military wives to collect intelligence that had cost American lives. "He never cared about any of us," she confided to Miranda during a debriefing. "We were just assets to be exploited, like you exploited your position as Donovan's wife." Miranda's question cut deep, leaving Helena speechless. At the military tribunal, proceedings moved with brutal efficiency. Alex's testimony, backed by Miranda's investigation and mountains of evidence, exposed the full scope of Warren's operation. He created a systematic program to exploit military families, turning spouses into unwitting intelligence assets, Alex declared, his voice echoing through the courtroom. Warren, stripped of his charisma and confidence, sat in the defendant's chair as attempts to bargain with hidden intelligence backfired when Alex's team revealed they had already secured and sealed those secrets. Multiple life sentences, to be served consecutively with no possibility of parole, the judge announced. Helena's own sentence came later. Although her cooperation had helped expose the network, Alex's influence ensured that her punishment reflected the severity of her crimes minus 20 years, the federal judge declared. The defendant's assistance in dismantling this conspiracy is noted, but the betrayal of national security cannot go unpunished. A year later, Alex stood in his Wyoming command center, overseeing the training facility he had built from the ashes of betrayal. The complex specialized in preparing military families for the modern battlefield of information warfare. Colonel Helene Gray entered, now serving as the facility's family support coordinator. "The new protocols you implemented have already identified 3 attempted infiltrations of military spouse networks." Alex nodded. "The enemy adapts. So must we." Captain Miranda Stone, now heading the Intelligence Training Division, brought up surveillance feeds. "Sir, even McAllister's tactical team has completed another successful response drill. Lessons from that night are being put to good use." The facility represented Alex's evolution from warrior to guardian, transforming personal betrayal into institutional reform, using Helena's and Warren's conspiracies as a blueprint for defending against future threats. A knock at his office door revealed Sergeant Justin Cross and Melody Cross with their newborn son, Peter Craddleton, a baby named for the fallen lieutenant, symbolizing hope for a stronger, more resilient military community. "Sir," Justin reported, "the new family security briefing program is ready for implementation across all bases." Alex studied the child, seeing in him the future they were fighting to protect. "Begin the rollout," he ordered. "No other family pays the price we did." The facility's training continued day and night, preparing the next generation of military families for the invisible wars fought with information and trust. Alex Donovan, the warrior who had turned personal pain into institutional strength, stood guard against those who would exploit the defenders of freedom. Meanwhile, Helena served her sentence in federal prison, and Warren rotted in maximum security. The arms dealers responsible for Lieutenant Gray's death were either dead or captured. Alex's revenge was complete, but his mission continued. He had learned that modern battles weren't fought only with weapons, but with loyalty, truth, and the strength to stand guard against those who would turn love into a weapon. The betrayal that had sought to destroy him had instead forged him into a protector, a guardian who understood that the greatest threats often came wrapped in smiles and gentle words. The facility's alarms tested silently while its security systems scanned for both seen and unseen threats. Alex Donovan, the commander who had transformed personal pain into global protection, continued his watch. The price of betrayal had been paid in full, but its lessons would safeguard generations to come. A decade later, the Guardians watched as Colonel Alexander Donovan, now Brigadier General, stood at the observation deck of the Wyoming Security Institute, observing teams of military personnel and their families participating in advanced security drills. At 52, his steel-gray eyes retained their predatory focus, and his reputation had grown into near-legendary status within military circles. General Captain Sarah Chun, his new intelligence officer, approached with a tablet displaying the latest security assessment from our global network. Alex reviewed the data with practiced precision. The Institute had expanded into 4 international locations, each dedicated to protecting military families from exploitation and infiltration. "How many attempted infiltrations this quarter?" he asked. 17 identified operations targeting military spouses, all neutralized before they could establish networks, Sarah reported. Alex's lips tightened at the mention of Warren Carmichael, still in maximum security, his empire dismantled, his legacy serving as a stark case study in how foreign operators exploited military family vulnerabilities. "Updates on the others?" Alex inquired. Sarah pulled up personnel files. Captain Miranda Stone now leads our European division at the NATO Command Center in Antwerp, a position that has prevented 3 major intelligence breaches this year alone. Alex nodded. Miranda took the lessons from Helena's betrayal and transformed them into a sophisticated counterintelligence program. Her team specializes in identifying potential threats before they can target military families. Staff Sergeant Evan McAllister is still heading tactical operations. His team intercepted a Chinese attempt to replicate Carmichael's spouse exploitation strategy last month. "They're adapting our methods, sir, but we're staying ahead." Alex observed through the observation window as Helene Gray conducted a briefing for newly assigned military families. Peter Gray, once a cadet, would have been proud. Helene had transformed her grief into purpose, building the Institute's family support program into a model adopted by armed forces worldwide. In a correctional facility in Duluth, Minnesota, a woman once known as Marina, now Helena, remained dignified after 15 years of incarceration. Her early release had been granted due to her continued cooperation and exemplary behavior. "Your belongings, Mrs. Donovan," the processing officer said, handing her a small box containing 15 years' worth of permitted possessions. Helena held her release papers as the words blurred before her eyes. A decade and a half of reflection, stripping away her justifications, leaving only the harsh reality of her choices. "Someone's here to meet you," the officer added. Outside, Dana Rivers waited by her car. The years had added silver to Dana's hair, but her expression still radiated the warmth that had once made her Helena's closest friend. "The support group has approved your application," Dana said as they drove. "You'll be working with military spouses, teaching them how to recognize manipulation tactics." Helena's hands trembled. "They trust me with that. After everything." General Donovan approved it personally, Dana revealed. "Your experience makes you uniquely qualified to spot the warning signs. The program operates under strict supervision, using your story as a cautionary tale." Helena would speak to military spouses about how Warren had exploited her vulnerabilities, how seemingly innocent questions could feed enemy intelligence operations. "Your ex-husband's institute turned your betrayal into a shield for others," Dana stated plainly. "The protocols developed after exposing Carmichael's operation are now our standard training for military families worldwide. The legacy of vigilance." At the annual conference of the Wyoming Security Institute, military leaders from across the globe gathered as Alex addressed the crowd from the podium. 10 years ago, a defense contractor named Warren Carey exploited our greatest vulnerability: the trust between military families. He turned spouses into unwitting intelligence assets, using their loneliness and frustration to gather classified information that cost American soldiers their lives. The audience listened in rapt silence, many aware of the personal cost behind his words. Today, we face sophisticated attempts to replicate his methods, operators targeting military families, seeking to turn love into a weapon. This institute exists to ensure they fail. In the front row, Colonel Justin Cross, now a colonel himself, sat with his wife, Melody Cross, and their son, Peter, now a cadet at a prestigious military academy. They embodied the new generation of military families. Trained, vigilant, and prepared for the invisible wars fought with information and trust. A visitor from Antwerp presented the latest intelligence. Attempted infiltrations had dropped by 60% since implementing the Institute's protocols. The enemy adapts, but we adapt faster, Alex noted. Later in his office, Helene Gray provided updates on the family support program. Helena's testimonials are making an impact. Military spouses connect with her story. They understand how easily it can happen, she explained, her tone neutral when mentioning her ex-wife's name. Redemption comes at a price, Alex replied. She's paying hers by protecting others from her mistakes. In the Institute's main tower, the chief analyst, Krista Myers, maintained constant surveillance on key players from the Carmichael conspiracy. Her quarterly reports landed on Alex's desk. Warren shows no signs of reform, she reported. He still attempts to manipulate other inmates, but his psychological profile is flagged. No one trusts him anymore. The Ham twins' story continued too. Dean had died in prison last year, while Daniel now served as a technical consultant for cybersecurity firms under strict monitoring. Santos Sterling worked with law enforcement to identify private military contractors gone rogue. Alex reviewed each file. The conspiracy that had nearly destroyed him had spawned an entire field of counterintelligence dedicated to protecting military families. Sir, Kristen hesitated. Helena's post-release monitoring shows consistent compliance. She's become an effective tool in preventing similar infiltrations. Tool in the operative sense. Alex's tone remained professional as he continued surveillance of the next generation. Peter Allen Jr. arrived, a young man dedicated to the fallen lieutenant, and he stood at attention in Alex's office. At 18, his bearing reflected the same dedication that had marked his namesake. I want to help expand the Institute's security program, he declared. Alex studied the young man. Your father tells me you've been studying the Carmichael case. Is that true? Yes, sir, Peter replied. Understanding how they exploited military families helps prevent it from happening again, and it reminds us how personal vulnerabilities can be turned against us. Alex nodded in approval. The next generation had learned the harsh lessons paid for in blood and betrayal. Across the globe, the Institute's security network operated 24 hours a day, monitoring threats to military families worldwide. Alex's vision had expanded beyond personal revenge into a legacy of protection. Captain Miranda Stone's European division had become a model for NATO allies. We've identified a pattern in Russian intelligence operations targeting diplomatic families now, using Warren's methods, she reported during a secure video conference. Adapt the protocols, Alex ordered. Expand the protection network. U.S. and MAX tactical teams conducted continuous drills, preparing for evolving threats. The lessons from that fateful night in North Carolina had been codified into standard operating procedures for military family protection. Helene Gray's family support program had expanded to include psychological screening and support services. We're not just preventing infiltration, she explained to new recruits. We're strengthening the family units that support our warriors. The price of peace. In a modest apartment near the support center, Nina decorated a wall with pictures of military families she had helped protect. A daily reminder of redemption earned through service. Tell us how it started, a young military wife asked during a session. How did you miss the signs? Helena's response carried the weight of 15 years of reflection. He offered understanding when I felt alone, but turned my resentment into a weapon. A single piece of information I shared put American lives at risk, and I was too blind to see it. Her testimony served both as a warning and a weapon against those who would replicate Warren's methods, the pain in her voice resonating in ways that clinical training never could. In Alex's office in the main tower of the Institute, panoramic views of the training grounds reminded him of how a personal betrayal had been transformed into a global security network. Photographs on the walls chronicle the Institute's growth, from a response to personal betrayal into a fortress protecting military families. The latest intelligence report detailed attempted infiltrations at bases worldwide, each failure validating the protocols born from his own experience, turning betrayal into a shield for others. "Sir, Sarah Chun has urgent news," announced the chief analyst. "We've identified a new operation targeting Air Force families, using Warren's methods, but more sophisticated." Alex's expression hardened with familiar focus. "The enemy adapts, but so do we. Deploy the countermeasures and alert Miranda's team in Europe. I want this network exposed and neutralized. Across the globe, teams mobilized to protect military families from those who would turn love into a weapon." In the twilight, the Institute's lights burned bright as teams monitored global threats. Alex stood at his window, watching the next generation of Guardians train. Peter, leading his cadet group through advanced security protocols, embodied the dedication of his namesake. The Institute had evolved beyond revenge into a legacy of protection. Later that day, Helene Gray presented the final reports. 10 years, sir. We've prevented more infiltrations than we can count. The enemy keeps trying, but we keep stopping them." Alex noted, his expression unreadable. The price of betrayal was high, but the returns, measured in saved lives and protected families, prove it was worth it. The Institute stood as his answer to those who would exploit military families. The lessons learned through Helena's betrayal and Warren's conspiracy forging an unbreakable shield for future generations. As night fell over Wyoming, the Institute's security systems continued their vigilant watch. Alex Donovan, the warrior who turned personal pain into institutional strength, remained ever watchful. The enemy would keep devising new methods, discovering vulnerabilities to exploit, but they would learn, as Warren did, that betrayal always comes with a price, and Alex ensured that this price would protect the future. Later, in his office, Alex reviewed the next day's training schedule. The world changed and threats evolved, but the mission remained constant. He had transformed revenge into redemption and personal pain into global protection. The price of betrayal had been paid in full, and its lessons would guard generations to come.